Welcome to the Sports Card Lessons Podcast. I'm your host, Big Ken. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on a streaming service, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You'll be notified whenever I drop any new content. Welcome. Thanks for being here. How is everyone doing? I hope everyone's having a great weekend. I just got back from the Mt Kisco show in Mt Kisco, New York. Probably should have passed on that show, but I'll explain myself later. But first, I want to talk a little bit on the last episode and what plan I put together after getting so many listeners reaching out with their stories and stories of their hobby friends when it came to grading at PSA. If you go back under the YouTube comments, you'll see a bunch of small stories on there too, where people who've gotten you know sent 12 cards in and came back with 10 nines, and then they just cracked them and sent them back in and ended up getting like 6 or 7 10s. um so really, the grading at PSA and the inconsistency of the grades. And again, thank you everyone for reaching out and sharing your stories. I've decided, as an experiment here on the podcast, to crack a number of these PSA nines and just wipe them down and resubmit them back, to PSA and track the consistency with the same exact cards. See what happens. Um, Most of those cards, I talk about, I go through them. I have a huge magnifying glass with a light. I go, up and down, back, front, corners, wipe them down, prep them to go. So cracking them out is not going to take much, just to wipe them down and resubmit them back. So, uh, we'll see what happens with that. I mean, I know, you know, uh, PSA has been really hard on Anthony Richardson cards, and that's where a lot of my nines came from. Before I came on, I was looking up and just going through certain cards that came back for me under Richardson with a 9. So like the Optic Preview Hollow, that the Don Russ. So their numbers on that right now, their pop counts on that. So PSA 10, 9, and 8 are 10, 19, and 5. The Optic Preview Blue Scope, 40, 44, 15. The Optic Preview Pink, 103, 102, 21. The Red, White, and Blue, the Prism, Red, White, and Blue, 10, 21, 2. The Prism Disco, 88, 100, 15. The Prism Pink, 14, 36, and 9. And the Silver Prism, 111, 193, and 7. Now, the Silver Prism, I have 3 of those here in the office. And one I purchased, 2 I pack pulled. Uh, the 2 I packed pulled are, yeah, visually, you can see they're off centered. But when I go back and I look at these PSA 10s that people are selling uh, on eBay, and I really try to compare them to the cards that I have, the off centeredness is almost equal to those cards that are off center. If you go look at there's very few that are dead center. Anthony Richardson, I think, over 90% of them are off centered. I don't know why they all came off centered on that. So now, I mean, I was thinking of just holding and selling those cards raw, but now I'm thinking, well, maybe I will submit them. Maybe there is a possibility that, and another thing too, on a lot of these cards, a lot of like the green prism, the pink prism, they all have that one little white dot on the back of the card. But I go to eBay and I go blow up those cards that are already PSA 10s, and they have the same white dot on the cards. So I know that's not the reason that I've gotten 9s on here. At first I thought, well, maybe it was that white dot that gave me a 9. My centering is good on this. My corners are good. I just don't understand why I got so many 9. Like, I have a stack here of 14 PSA 9s of Anthony Richardson cards. I mean, I guess I shouldn't complain so much that most of my CJ Strouds came back 10s. I had 2 of his cards that came back 9s. One was the orange laser, the other is the optic preview blue scope. And I mean, I think at least the orange laser, it makes sense to crack that and send it back and try, because I sent, I think, 4 of those and 3 came back 10s and that one came back a 9. I mean, if I could get that to come back a 10, the price jumps up. I mean, it's definitely price wise with the increase in the price, it's worth it to spend another $18 to try to get that to come up to a 10. But that is my plan, and I plan on, taking you all along for that ride. I'll document it here on the podcast. I'll let you know which ones I've cracked and I'm sending back, and we'll go from there. I'll keep you updated on that. The Mount Kisco Card Show. I like this show. It's every few months, and I usually do pretty well with pickups there. I talked last week about going on Saturday. That's always been the day of the show. So shout out to my man Bill at Bill and Billy Sports Cards for pointing out that this show was actually Sunday this weekend and not Saturday, because I probably would have gotten up Saturday morning and just thinking it was Saturday and drove down to that show. So shout out to him. Appreciate that. I've been thinking about this show all week, about the dealers that I usually see and I usually make deals with at the show, thinking that they're probably going to be at the Philly show this weekend. And really just wondering if this show was going to have its usual vibe, or were all the high-end dealers just going to be gone from this show. I went to the Philly show last May. I'm pretty sure it was last May. It was either the end of February or beginning of March. It's an 8-hour round trip for me. And making that trip down, the 4-hour trip down, I realized when I got there for this particular show, not all Philly shows, but the one that happens at this time of year. And again, I've only been there once. I was only there last year at this time. Walking into the show, I felt like I was walking into the hobby dead zone, and I talked about this last year. Just that funny time that's after the Super Bowl, right? It's before baseball starts. It's kind of like that. I refer to it as the dead zone. It's that funny when and I'm going to admit I'm probably similar as a dealer from my last show, because dealers are having, we still have the playoff prices on our football, right? Even though that the Super Bowl's over, we still have those higher prices. Hope we're going to get them on some of those cards. The new releases that are coming out, the Prism cards, I'm talking about the Stroud, the Richardson, all these new release cards that those prices are still pretty high on those cards. News of trades, or a lot with the NFL now, getting ready to, when the new season starts, with all these trades and who's going where and who's making a deal. Some of those prices will start to go up. I remember being there last year when Justin Fields prices were going up because they made that trade with the Panthers. So no reason for prices to go up, but why not? It's just could say anything you want. He's got a new wide receiver. He's going to become a better quarterback now, right? And we're still waiting on news to come. Who's getting contracts done, who's staying, who's being released, and that a lot of that comes into play with prices on football. I think personally, March for me is just a tough time to sell or buy. This year, I talked about adding baseball on. I haven't had a show to set up. I'll be setting up next weekend, but even when I was getting ready to go to this show and I started looking at prices, I'm like, wow, these prices are pretty low on the baseball still. Like they haven't really gone anywhere yet. And I've never been in the baseball lane, right? So here I am just comparing it to football, right? So it's before the season starts. That's when the prices go up. So baseball is a little different. I was actually consuming some content on my drive down and back, um, and they were talking about the spring training and the uh, how the prices on how the pricing on baseball works. When it should pop up, when it and it's a long season. Baseball is such a long season. So here in my mind, being a football guy, saying, "Yeah, I got all this baseball, just like football. I just move it before the season starts." So I'm educating myself now on, when these all these PSA graded cards are going to be right to start selling, and should I just sell some now, or should I be holding on, and how long do I hold, things like that. So always learning, right? A teacher is always a student. And it looks like it could be another month or two before I'm really ready to sell any of the baseball too. So again, just a funny time in March. Um, Probably happy that I'm not really setting up in any big shows anytime soon, because I'm really not sure. I mean, still have a lot of the Bowman U basketball. I have a ton of pop culture stuff, right? So I always have stuff to put in the case, but starting to pull the football out now and just put it away, because it just makes no sense now to put it out there and overprice it, or put it out there and sell it at its current price, when we just know that these prices are going to go up in a few months. Might as well just hold on to them. So, anyways, up early this morning, headed down to the show. I will say up front that I'm still feeling some of the effects from having COVID. You can probably hear it, and my sounding a little nasally here on the show here, and just low energy for me. Compared to the usual me, just feeling just low energy. So got to the show. The only thing I dislike about this show is the terrible lighting. The lighting in this show is horrible. It has those yellow lights, and if you've been to this show, you know exactly what I mean. It's just hard to see. It's hard to look at cards. Like, a lot of people have their flashlights or their phones on looking in cases, and if you come across a raw card that you're thinking about buying, like things that I would do, buying to grade, it's really tough to examine the card. Um, it almost becomes cumbersome, right? Because you're standing there with your case. I hate putting my case on the floor at a show. I usually just put it between my legs and my feet, and just no one's probably ever going to make a move on my case, right? But just for me, I would hate to have that panicked feeling where my case is missing, or I just don't know where it is all the time. So then, you got the phone, you got the light out, and you know what? My age, my eyes aren't that good anyway. So it's tough all around to try to, look at cards and examine cards when the lighting is so dim. Um, as expected, the graded football cards in the 300 to 800 range, were mostly over comps. And I expected that. I expected still some of those old pricing still be on there. Um, and as far as the raw, I have to say, after being burned a few times in the raw cards, um, I kind of inspect each dealer to come up with an observation, right? Could be right, could be wrong. But if I'm coming up to your table and you have mostly graded cards there, um, and a couple raw cards that are desirable, I'll peek at them, but the chances are they've already been graded, or they're not worth grading. And I have to say, I really appreciate the dealers, and I'm going to try to be this guy that I'm talking about appreciate. That when, just to ask about the card, like, "What's up with this card? Like, why isn't it graded?" Or, you know, and the dealer's pretty honest, and they'll say, "Oh, that one's off-centered, or this is a soft corner, there's a dimple, there's a print line, there's a scratch somewhere," and they'll point it right out. So you don't have to get crazy and looking. I've been to shows where I a local show where I looked at a card and the dealer said right away, "Oh, I just got that, and if I don't sell it today, I'm sending that Monday to PSA. That thing will gem." And I've been looking at it saying, "Man, I don't think it'll gem." And then I go back a month later to that same local show, and that same card is still in the case, and I'm hearing that same story all over again. So things like that. I mean, I know it happens, but I think I would rather be, as a dealer, I'd rather be the other guy and say, "Hey, this got a line on it. It's off centered." And I've sold that. I've done that. I sold 2 CJ Stroud silver cards. One had a dimple, and one was just off centered. And I said right away, and then, why is it this price and not that price? Well, it's priced to sell. I mean, it's not going to gem, it's not going to 10, and this is the reason why. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that happened today. I said at the show, said to the guy right away. I asked him about a card, and as he's pulling it out, he's telling me why the card isn't graded and what the problem is with the graded. So 100% I appreciate that. And I think everybody else would too. Uh, Look, I know every card can't be a 10. I mean, I understand that every card can't be a 10. And there is value in the nines, right? We know that there's values in the nines, but recently you're starting to see like raw versions of cards selling more than PSA nines because people are like, this card just looks better, right? This card looks centered, the corners look good. It looks like this card could gem. So I'd rather spend this extra money on this card over the PSA 9 and hope that that card can come out of 10. Um, and then you have people on the other side. I mean, there's people that show up and they buy all the PSA 9s just the price is right. They're just going to crack them out, like what I just talked about doing earlier. Crack them out, wipe them down, and send them back. And if there is that inconsistency with PSA, uh, you know what people are saying, then I mean they probably have better than a 50-50 shot of getting back a 10. And we know now, I mean, the difference in price between the 9s and 10s are really jumping up now. I mean, just on some of these cars now, I talked about like that Stroud laser card. The PSA 9 is like $115. And I'm pulling this price. I'm pretty sure that's what I remember seeing on that, versus the 10 is like $400, right? So like 390 something. So it's worth, to me, it's worth, I said earlier, worth an additional $18 investment to hope to try to get that to the 10. Now, if it comes back a 9, it comes back a 9. I still pack pulled the card, right? So even at the 118 or whatever it is, and if the value, all those values go up, moving more towards June and July, then it would even, you know, it it wouldn't matter because the 9's gonna be worth even more at that time. But who knows, right? I was surprised on a lot of these, especially the Richardson. I was reading those pop counts out, and I was surprised that those are fairly low numbers, compared to, uh, PSA having these specials going on through the month of January. I thought they would have been inundated with these cards that getting graded. I thought they would be, it well into the hundreds of the adding up the 10s, 9s, and 8s, and they really weren't. So I don't know if people are just looking at them and saying they're not going to grade well, or people are just holding them and haven't decided to grade these cards yet. Right. So that was one of my concerns with these cards. I got a bunch of 10s back. I'm looking at the price. I'm like, wow, the price is great. The pop counts are low, but I'd really think that price is going to increase as we get closer to the national and then for the new football season. But my concern was the pop counts. There's gonna be so many of these cards graded that that price may come down, and right now, there's not that many. Not I was when I went looking at those pop counts, I was surprised how low they were. So I'm still feeling good about my decision to be holding these cards and waiting until, at least June or July to start selling these cards again and start moving these cards. And I'll be watching the prices. I'll see where they go on them. Um, but just trying to make the best decision possible to maximize. So a few people ask me all the time, when do you think is the perfect time? Like when, you know what? We would all love to hit that perfect peak, right? To be the highest comp before it starts to drop down again. But I'm okay being at that 80 to 90%. I'm okay selling that, you know, on its way up close to the top. I don't need to be at that peak. I don't need to hit that perfectly, because I think what happens and what's happened to me is I've held cards and realized that, man, I lost a ton of money on those cards. So I'm okay. Once that's happened, I'm okay to say, look, it's on its way up. Let's make an educated decision. Is now the right time? Is next week? You know, don't want to wait too long. You don't want to wait till that peak hits and it starts coming back down the other side, right? So it's okay for me. For me, it's okay. And then people ask me my advice, and I tell them all the time, it's okay to sell it on the way up. That you don't have to wait for that peak, and that's the way I feel on that. And if you're in, if you're into the card, if you ripped the card and you graded it, or you bought it raw and you graded it, if you buy it graded, there's that profit margin becomes very slim, and you really have to hit that right, which I tried to do last year with that. And I talked about how difficult it was. I did well overall, but it was difficult trying to figure out when was the right time to sell each card. And some of those cards I waited, and the prices never even changed on them. And I said, well, I guess now is the time, right? I'll just, move that card for what I paid for it. A couple cards went down, a number of those cards went up. So now that I'm grading all these cards, my profit margin, I've got a bigger margin now, right? So it's okay for me to say, look, I'm selling it on the way up. I'll leave some meat on the bone for somebody else. I'll take my profit and go to be the first guy, to be the guy that started with the card. Is, probably because how many hands is this card going to change? Any of these tens that I have, how many hands are they going to, it's going to change hands how many times after it leaves me? And I was the first one. I pulled the card, graded the card, I got the 10, right? And now I'm going to move that card. How many times is it going to exchange hands? And where's the profit level going to be on that? It's not going to be that, maybe one or two more times, and that's it. And then somebody's going to have to lose on that card, right? It's just the nature of the game. So at some point, that value is going to come settle back down at a certain price. It may go further from I could sell that card thinking I'm selling it at the 85-90% climb, and I could be selling at the 50%. It could climb way up more, or I could be selling it almost close to 100, right? But at some point, it's going to hit that peak and drop down the other side. Every card does that, right? So it's good to be the first guy with the card. That's all I have to say about that. I did run into a few people at the show. Shout out at Homer Sports Cards and at Hank's Sports Cards. So I didn't know Hank was going to be set up there. Always good to see Hank. Hank's my fellow Mike Tyson. I should just say boxer, because he does a lot with the boxing cards. But had a nice Mike Tyson card chat with him, and Homer Sports Cards. We message all the time. It's funny because we both knew we were going to be at the show, and after I knew that the show was Sunday, then I reminded him. He's like, "Yeah, no, I knew it was Sunday," and we made no plan, just that we were going to both be there in the morning, and we ran into each other immediately. So it was great to see him as well. At the show, there was a few cards I talked about I was interested in. Um, it was one of those things where I looking at the price that on the card and what the recent comps, and it was definitely priced well over recent comps. Normally, I would have said something, hey, last comp, whatever, what can we do here? Today I just passed. I know the buying window on football is still a few weeks away, late March, early April. So I figure, you know what? It's no sense, trying to start negotiating down, by leaps and bounds when I know, most of these cards are going to be priced much better a few weeks from now. Um, and I'm still going to be cash heavy, right? I'll be cash ready when those prices come down to where I need them to be. Um, will I buy some graded cards? Possibly, if the price is right. Um, it's always fun to pick up a variety, right? So even though I did all this talking on the raw stuff, there's still a handful or more of graded cards, 10s that I'm going to pick up just because I know when I'm picking them up, the price is going to be right. Just pick it up now and stash it and hope for the best. I mean, one of the things that a couple people said to me today is like, they see me coming like, oh, I got a Mahomes card. And I said, my exact words is now the best time to buy. And, you know, I don't know if any time is a good time to buy Mahomes right now, right? It's coming off, back-to-back Super Bowls. They're making deals over there that they're trying to keep everybody to three-peat it. And I don't, one of the things I talked about was selling some of my cards and buying them back in a month or two when the prices come down. I, I'm I'm still all for that if the prices come down and the prices are right. But if they stay high, there's no sense buying into them. Not for me. Um, I have my PC, right, and I have my the cards for my on the business end of this that I'm putting in the cases. And if I'm going to buy a Mahomes card to put in the case, it just needs to make sense. The card has to make sense for me to put it in there. I can't take big chances on it. So finally this week, Upper Deck Hockey Series 2 release week. Conor Bedard hunting season has officially opened. I bought a couple blasters of the OPC that came out a few weeks ago. I mean, these are very close in release. And I pulled one of his rookie cards, which was only, I think at the time, selling for like $80, 75 or $80. But the card was beautiful. It was in beautiful condition. So I'm going to send that to PSA. But I bought one hobby box of the Upper Deck Series 2. And it's crazy how the last 3 years I purchased a case of hobby boxes for the last for 21, 22, and 23. And those cases, the cost of those cases were like from $850 to under $1,000, right? Nine something. This year, one hobby box, $299. It's crazy. I bought one, I ripped it. No Bedard Young Guns, no Bedard card in there at all. And I'm watching social media, and everyone and their brother is pulling one of these cards. It's like you can't open Instagram or Facebook, but everybody, I got one, I got two, I got three. And I've seen enough not to waste the money and chase this card right now and buying boxes. Um, I would have to think with so many being pulled, the price, I mean, the prices when they were first being pulled, the prices were over $1,000, right? They were selling for like 1,100, $1,200. Then they were at 1,000. I checked before I started this. The last sale was $599, right? So it's under $600. It keeps dropping like that. In the next few weeks, I'll be able to buy one of these at the cost or less than the cost of a hobby box, right? So it's no sense me buying hobby boxes trying to pull one of these cards when I'll probably be able, for the cost of a hobby, but I have to imagine that, these raw cards, there's so many being pulled, and you have to know Upper Deck, I'm sure overprinted the heck out of this. I mean, you go online to, any of these places selling hobby boxes, and they're all fully stocked up, and you know how many boxes and people have been ripping. And interestingly enough, that you go to a place like Dave and Adams, and they won't even sell you a case. They won't sell you a sealed case. They're just selling boxes, right? So whatever that is, I'm going to wait and just buy one. Just wait and buy one. And if Target comes out with the tins of the mega boxes, I may pick up some of those and take my chance there. But at the prices that most of those are selling, aftermarket out of Target, um, double and triple the price, I'm all set. I would just as soon spend the money on just buying one of the cards itself. I did take a shot, right? I ripped one, took a shot and missed, right? So I will wait. That's it. That's all I got for you today. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And if you like what you hear, please definitely subscribe. And most importantly, tell a friend and spread the word. And until next time, take care of yourselves and everyone around you.